Hi, Daria.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to participate in our SPG Voices video series today. This series introduces some of specific groups' many talented experts. So let's start off with a quick introduction. Who are you?
My name is Daria. I work as a product manager and a project manager, specializing in business automation processes.
How long have you been at SPG?
Almost 5 years already.
What is your area of expertise?
So I'm standing in the gap between the business and IT. From the one hand, we have the people who know how the business works and know every single exception, but they don't usually articulate what exactly that means so that the developers can build it. On the other hand, we have the developers who can build anything in the world as long as somebody explains them what this anything means. And I'm trying to bridge this gap. It's not always easy, but it's for sure fun.
What are you currently working on?
So currently, as I already mentioned, I specialize in process automation. One of my main projects is internal operations system. So basically, it's a set of multiple tools that cover day-to-day operations from customer management, offer management, maybe project administration, time tracking, and so on and so forth. But the interesting part here is actually not just the software, but it's also that somebody was doing this process in Excel for 6 years. And now you have to persuade this person and the Excel that it's time to move on. It's time to modernize this workflow. And I guess that's the real work. Besides that, I also specialize in rule-heavy industries, like, for example, insurance. And that's, of course, the world of itself. Because it looks simple, because it's just a form, right? But of course, in the background, it has so many rules, so many exceptions, so many conditions, so many connections to different other applications, email generation, legal requirements. And it's not always clear how exactly to do it. So to sum up, I try to help businesses to make their workflows less manual, less fragmented, and less dependent on internal knowledge.
What challenges have you faced?
The first one is, of course, adoption. I definitely learned it the hard way, because I used to think that the most difficult part is to build the great application, to make the best UI possible. In reality, it's not really true, because you're not just introducing an application to substitute a manual step in the process. You are changing the habit. And for the organization, the benefit is quite clear, because you have a better data structure, you have the better understanding what's going on, of course, more control. But you're also asking the user to, for example, enter the data earlier or enter it in a more structured way. And of course, for the user, that might straightforward feel like much more work from the beginning. And this is where the adoption fails, because the user feels this cost right away, but the benefit or the value for the organization lies somewhere else. The toughest part here is to explain to the user why it matters, why they have to do it, and why it's actually important for the organization later on. And that's why the first technical go live, it's just a milestone in the project. The real success is when this new application becomes a normal way of working. Second challenge is connected to legacy system, in particularly treating legacy system as pure technical debt. Because in reality, those are enormous containers of business logic, on business knowledge. And the challenge here is that this logic is often invisible. It's buried in code. It's in people's head. Sometimes it's just straightforward, not visible until something breaks. And that's why this extraction of the knowledge is so important. And if you fail to do that, you're actually not modernizing anything. You are simply rebuilding the same complexity in a newer language. And that's why sometimes this discovery phase is so underrated. And sometimes it's very hard to persuade our customers to actually spend time and money on it. But in my opinion, this is the most important step, because when you understand what you have to build, it becomes easy, because we have great engineers who can do anything.
What solutions have been developed since then?
In response to the adoption challenge, I would say that the new tool should not be treated as just another alternative for the workflow. It should be more like ripping the plaster. So from this day, you just have to use the new application. Of course, it's uncomfortable. Of course, it's going to be a little bit chaotic. Complainers are going to complain. But I think that's the only way. So you just explain to the users, okay, this is how the requests are done. This is how the approvers are done. And this is where you see the status. And that's it, point. Of course, making the tool mandatory is not going to do it, because the users obviously have to understand how to do it. So that's of course, a whole other part, how to teach them how to use it. And of course, nowadays, there are so many different walkthrough tours that you can implement, tooltips, validations, and so on. So the goal here is to make it as easy as possible for the user, so that it's also as comfortable as possible. And speaking about legacy, of course, nowadays AI helps a lot. So tools like Ozgar or others help you document the as-is state, the existing code. It helps you to draw the diagrams, to create documentation and so on. But again, it's not enough. Of course, the real work is understanding why it was done. So perhaps this rule is completely obsolete and you have to just remove it. So the real value here comes of the combination. AI is doing the analysis and the person or business experts are interpreting it.
What trends do you see for the future?
Of course, I have to say AI, but not in the generic sense that AI is going to take our jobs away. So for me, it's interesting how exactly to implement it in the process automation. Because AI can easily read what's written, but the problem is that a lot of things are not documented and you can't just come up with a magic prompt that can also magically come up with it, right? So that's why I think that for especially product owners and project managers, it's a great tool to skip all the administrative part, to speed up the whole initial discovery phase of the documentation and the processes that were already implemented before, and focus on more strategic implementations. Also would like to note that there's a lot of tacit knowledge hidden in people's heads. So sometimes when you talk to the experts, especially in insurance, for example, they explain you what the form should do. They explain you some edge cases, but of course they can't right away tell you all of the things, right? And that's why you need the workshops. That's why you need to draw the diagrams. That's why you need to walk the users through the diagrams and perhaps discover other flaws. And this is the part where AI cannot help. This is the human interaction that will not be substituted. And yes, to sum up, I'm quite excited for it because, of course, the initial administrative tasks are quite boring. So nowadays it becomes much more fun and interesting to actually focus on the value for the business and not sitting and documenting field by field.
Thank you, Daria.
Thank you.